bandwagon of advancement, for there is nothing, he said, a man can do that a woman cannot equally do. He went on to say that women should not be left behind, but should work side by side with men for the advancement of the country, thus reiterating the need for more women in the National Assembly. And this, he said, can only be done if women know their rights and support each other. For her part, Councillor Amijata said that the government has created a conducive environment for women in this country, so it is left to the women to work together and support each other to achieve their aim. She went on to say that it is high time the women put away their differences and work towards the advancement of the Gambian woman. For Grts News, Edna Musu reporting.
Well, time now for our first break. We'll be back with news from outside the Gambia after this break.
His Excellency the President, Chair Professor Dr. Alhaji Yahya AJJ Jami, the organizing committee of the Miss 22nd July Scholarship Pageant proudly presents the finals of the 5th edition of the Scholarship Pageant, taking place on Saturday, December 7, 2013 at the Benjamin Hall Paradise Suites Hotel. The scholarship pageant is geared towards promoting excellence among girls in line with Vision 2020 for sustainable growth and development. The pageant is a display of academic potentials, talent, and beauty. The theme for this year is promoting positive attitudinal change for sustainable development, the role of the youth. Support the Miss 22nd July Scholarship Pageant as the scheme will benefit all and sundry.
The Ministry of Health is organizing countrywide meningitis campaign from the 28th November to 4th December 2013. Persons 1 to 29 years will be vaccinated. Go out to health centers, pantabars, schools, markets and Johnsons to get your dose. One dose is equal to 10 years protection.
Dem leen ngeen pikiir du seytaan du jine jàngoro la suñu biir soo ko yëgee sa yaram bul toog di xaar ak diir di nga fagaroo ngeen faju.
Meningitis. Meningitis.
It's the Block Entertainment.
Meningitis. Anana hulina kele fasitano. Meningitis.
Let's now shift our attention to the international scene. Poland was one of the few European economies that grew during the global economic crisis, but then it hit road bumps, suffering economic slump. Now the country has a new finance minister, and as CNN's Jim Boulding reports, with Europe on the move, Poland is looking at full recovery.
In the streets of Warsaw, with Poles demanding jobs and better retirement security. So what happened to an economy that continued to grow right through the recent economic crisis? Well, the first half of 2013 was not what Poles had come to expect. Austerity measures like pension reform took hold. Economic growth ground to a halt. Some taxes and unemployment rose.
In 2012, Poland managed to have an enormous acceleration of the public investments, especially due to Euro Championships that took place in 2012. In 2013, the government has to lower significantly the public expenditures on road construction.
Poland's building boom for the football championships came to an end, but more importantly, consumer spending slowed. Being one of Europe's largest countries, the economy benefited from a growing middle class for the past 20 years. But growth in 2012 was 1.9%, down from the annual rate of 4.5% in 2011. Now, though, the last half of 2013 is looking brighter.
Until the moment, the GDP growth was driven by very strong internal demand. But today's figures are driven surprisingly by a very strong export.
Though Poland is in the European Union, it has stayed out of the Eurozone. Its currency, the zloty, rose in 2012 hurting exports, but now has fallen in value, making its products even cheaper for its biggest trading partner, Germany. Poland benefits from having a well-educated but cheaper labor force. That's why manufacturers like automakers stamp out parts in Poland and ship them to plants in the West.
The key engine for growth is unit labor costs, which are much lower than in Western European countries.
But that makes Poland dependent on outside firms and the fluctuation of currencies. And painful structural reforms are proving politically difficult. Critics say there is not enough money spent on research and development. For instance, Poland still relies on coal for 90% of its energy. Despite calls for massive investment in alternative energies, Poland is falling behind the EU targets for renewables. In general, Poland suffers from a perception it's still an emerging market, which scares off some investors.
But as far as the investment sentiment, I do not see any optimism right now. And this is about Polish investors, but also the same concerns about international.
More than 2 decades.
2013 was worse than expected, but compared to Europe or Eurozone, you say still growth, and it's not as bad as in many countries.
And with Europe growing again, Poland is prized to benefit. Jim Bolden, CNN, London.
Well, take a look at this. It's an army robot that could help fill a dying stomach and a gap in the Chinese labor market. CNN's David McKenzie now meets the new robot, and he now tells us more.
The future. Mr. Shui started out as a chicken farmer, but when a flu virus wiped out his flock, he searched for a new way to make a living. I went into a noodle shop and I saw the noodle maker made more money than me, he says, but I didn't know how to make noodles. So this amateur inventor built something that could. Call it the Noodle Bot. With this robot, 1 minute 4 bowls of noodles, he says. With a chef, 1 minute 2 bowls.
So the Noodle Bot is fast and it's also versatile. Mr. Sway said he can do 8 different types of noodles. This is the widest kind. He says he invented it to look like a person, to give it that human touch.
They designed it to look like a cartoon so that children like it more.
So if I look at this, it looks a bit like you. You're kind of the same.
It's much more handsome than me, he says. It took Shui 3 months to design the bot and years to perfect it. They ship it across China and around the world.
So the factory floor is one thing, but the real test of the Noodle Bot is in the noodle shop. Let's see the Noodle Bot in action. Okay.
The customers love it, says Fan Guo. They call him Ultraman.
They call him Ultraman.
But mostly it saves him money. He doesn't need to train, feed, or give the Noodle Bot a place to sleep. It saves me energy, says the noodle maker. It does the same noodles that I do, and it costs less than me. But as labor costs rise in China, robots are starting to replace human labor. It's cheaper. In the future, the noodle bots could replace all the human noodle makers. Chopping noodles today, but who knows what's next for the noodle bot.
David McKenzie, CNN, Beijing.
Well, China is the latest country to send rescuers to the Philippines. A foreign ministry spokesman says relief workers from the Chinese Red Cross left on Wednesday and an additional medical team would be sent later this week. It has been 12 days since Typhoon Haiyan hit the Philippines, and the extent of the damage is still being assessed. The official death toll continues to rise and now stands at 4,011. Survivors are trying to recover any way they can. In one small coastal town, fishermen have torn their damaged refrigerators into boats to replace those destroyed by the typhoon. They have been using these boats to catch enough fish to feed their families. CNN's Carl Penhold tells us more from Tacloban in this report.
There's a multi-track effort going on the ground here right now. One, of course, is to take care of the survivors, and one of the good pieces of news there is that some of those aid bottlenecks now seem to be working out, and we are seeing a lot more aid starting to arrive here in Tacloban and being distributed in an even fashion to survivors.